For my collection of propaganda materials.
At this time, brothers and sisters, it is indeed my pleasure to introduce to you a brother who's been around for a long, long, long time.
Mr. Blair, this is for Iraq. Keir Starmer, this is for Gaza.
I've always.
God war, we mustn't make the same mistake again. I'm sorry, Mr. Galloway?
You said we. Are you an Israeli?
I am, yes.
I don't debate with Israelis. I've been misled. Sorry.
Racism? What?
I don't recognize Israel, and I don't debate with Israelis.
I'm not the kind of man who's easily intimidated. I'm not intimidated by hostile journalists and broadcasters. I'm not intimidated by cameras being pointed in my face. I'm afraid only of God, you see. I'm afraid only of God.
Mr. Galloway, are you proud of having got rid of one of the very few black women in Parliament?
What a preposterous question. I know it's very late in the night, but wouldn't you be better by starting by congratulating me for one of the most sensational election results in modern history?
Are you proud of having got rid of one of the very few black women in Parliament?
I'm not, Jeremy, move on to your next question.
Well, you're not answering that one.
No, because I don't believe that people get elected because of the colour of their skin. I believe people get elected because of their record and because of their policies. So move on to your next question.
Are you
because
proud?
I've got a lot of people who want to speak to me.
If
you ask that question again, I'm going. I warn you now.
Don't try and threaten me, Mr. Galloway, please.
You're the one who's trying to badger me.
I'm not trying to badger you. I'm merely asking you whether you're proud of having driven out of Parliament one of the very few black women there, a woman you accused of having on her conscience the deaths of 100,000 people.
Oh, well, there's no doubt about that one.
I hope you didn't practice that question, did you? You fool. What are you? Are you a student journalist?
Tell us how much you care about right.
Are you a student journalist?
No, it's ITV Granada. Please,
the people just elected me.
To address some of the specifics that the Prime Minister said about you this evening, he said that you backed Hezbollah. Is that true?
I don't know what that means, backed Hezbollah. I oppose Israel's occupation of Lebanon, and I respect the right of people in occupied territory to resist their occupier. So I'm not sure what business that is of his, because you see,
Hezbollah are a terrorist organisation.
Actually, they're part of the government of Lebanon, a country with which we have sovereign diplomatic relations. I had this debate with Sky's Anna Botting in 2006. It's quite an epic clip. You should watch it.
How do you justify your support for Hezbollah and its leader, Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah?
A preposterous way to introduce an item, and what a preposterous first question. 24 years ago, on the day my daughter was born, and I've just celebrated her 24th birthday, I had to dash to the maternity hospital to see her given birth from a mass demonstration in London against the Israeli invasion and occupation of Lebanon. Israel has been invading and occupying Lebanon all of my 24-year-old daughter's life. The Hezbollah are a part of the Lebanese national resistance who are trying to drive, having successfully driven most Israelis from their land in 2000, Israel from the rest of their land, and to get back those thousands of Lebanese prisoners who were kidnapped by Israel under the terms of their illegal occupation of Lebanon. It's Israel that's invading Lebanon. It's Israel that's attacking Lebanon, not Lebanon that's attacking Israel. Israel is invading Lebanon and has killed 30 times more Lebanese civilians than have died in Israel. So it's you who should be justifying the evident bias which is written on every line on your face and is in every nuance of your voice and is loaded in every question that you ask. Absurd.
So you would prefer Iraq still to have Saddam Hussein?
That's not what I said.
No, well, that's the right question, isn't it? It's a simple question, yes or no.
That's not the choice, you see. That's not the choice. That's not the choice. The idea that Iraq is better off because of what Bush and Blair did is simply absurd. You only have to look at your own news broadcasts to see how stupid a statement that is.
It's not a statement, it's a question. It's a reasonable question, and it's
not
one
a
that we
reasonable
listen.
one.
It's one we put to Robert
You're the
Fisk.
last people asking it. Nobody else in the world is asking it. Everybody knows this war is a bloody disaster. Why don't you just accept it? Because your station, though admittedly not as bad as the BBC, was an essential component of this invasion. You regurgitated endlessly the propaganda. I've got the videos if you want me to show you them. Endlessly regurgitated the propaganda and talked the country into its worst disaster for 100 years. So have some humility and accept that you were wrong.
It's not a question of humility, Mr. Galloway. It's a question of simply asking simple questions. And I think most of our viewers would have appreciated a straightforward yes or no. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Interesting as ever talking to you. George Galloway in central London. Thank you.
My wife's having a baby, and I'm fighting a crucial by-election, all on the same day. I woke up this morning to learn that Donald Trump had landed 59 cruise missiles on yet another Arab country. What could go wrong?
George Galloway is one of quite a few people today saying Ken Livingstone talked about the facts. Why do you believe it was anti-Semitic?
Well, George expressed it, as ever, far better than Ken Livingstone. George said, Zionism and Nazism are two sides of the same coin. Now, that is clearly not true. Nazism was intended to destroy the Jewish people. That was his intention. The problem is that people use anti-Zionism to conceal their anti-Semitism. You say you're anti-Zionist, well, what you're really saying is you're against the existence of the State of Israel. If you don't want Israel to exist, that is clearly anti-Semitic. It's not a kind of vaguely nice opinion. It's actually a very bad opinion.
George Galloway?
No, Zionism and Israel are political constructs. If you were for the downfall of the Soviet Union, John was, that didn't mean you hated Russian people. In fact, you could say it meant the opposite, that you wanted to liberate the Russian people from the political system under which they lived. Ken Livingstone doesn't have a racist bone in his body. In fact, he'd still be the mayor of London if he hadn't gone out on a limb on anti-racist causes over and over again. We cannot allow this conflation. It's dangerous for everybody. Being against Israel is not being against Jews. Many Jews are against Israel. You've just had one on the screen, Lenny Brennan.
He's probably the greatest populist, apart from Ken Livingstone, that the left of the Labour Party has produced, and I expect him to bring some drama back into the Parliament.
There are people that listen to what you say about whether or not Israel has a right to exist, what you say about what many Jewish people think are threatening slogans.
We had this conversation last night. Why are you reheating it?
Because in the light of the Prime Minister's
Don't keep
statement.
telling me about the Prime Minister as if he was Moses.
Do you not respect the Prime Minister?
Do I respect the Prime Minister? I despise the Prime Minister. And guess what? Guess what? Millions and millions and millions of people in this country despise the Prime Minister. I don't respect the Prime Minister at all.
Right, you put your finger on the button, though, didn't you, when you said that Hezbollah was set up back in the 1980s in order to remove every Israeli soldier from Lebanese soil. As you said, it achieved that in 2000.
No, it didn't.
This is a setback.
No, it didn't. It didn't. This is a key point that you're concealing from your viewers. Israel was forced out of most of the south of Lebanon in 2000. It still occupies a part of Lebanon since 2000.
The Shebaa Farms area, which is subject to this latest UN draft resolution.
Thousands of Lebanese prisoners have been kidnapped by Israel. Hezbollah
I spoke
and the
just a moment
Lebanese
ago to the Israeli
want them to
Foreign
be
Ministry
released.
spokesman who said that the 3 Lebanese who have been captured, perhaps you'd like to use that word, have been
Anna,
before
it's
a
not
judge
those. These are
and
not
been
the
through
prisoners.
a court of law.
Oh, please, have a slightly longer memory than 4 weeks. I'm talking about the thousands of prisoners taken during the 18 years of Israeli occupation, illegal occupation of South Lebanon. These are the prisoners that have to be released in exchange for the Israeli soldiers that were captured at the beginning of this wave of the crisis.
Oh, wait, I mean, John McTernan quoted you actually earlier. I mean, you had said Nazism and Zionism were two sides of the same coin.
Well, they actually did mint a coin to use in the program, the Havara program.
For the deal.
To ship Jews out of Germany. Here's the point.
But do you think that some people might take offence to that?
No, Zionism and Nazism, for a brief period of time, cooperated to get Jews out of Germany because both of them believed that Jews should not be in Germany. The Zionists believed they should be in Palestine for one set of reasons.
and the Nazis believed
But
it
to say
for
Hitler
an entirely...
supported Zionism is surely a perversion.
well,
and Zionism
they
was about
cooperated.
liberating Jews from persecution.
It's not, look, the Zionists were not Nazis and the Nazis were not Zionists. And actually, if you look at the transcript, Livingston never said that they were. He said that they cooperated together, and they did. That's a matter of historical fact.
He said Hitler supported
You don't actually need to bring the historian from America. You could bring many historians from Israel. This is not a secret. It's only a secret to those now waking up to it. They were cooperating because they had the same idea, that the European Jews should not be in Europe, they should be in Palestine.
Now what?
And you will not trick me or force me into retreating from the platform on which I stood and for which I now have a mandate that I will take into the House of Commons on Monday. I'm not Jeremy Corbyn, you see. I don't turn the other cheek. If you slap me, I'll slap you back.
Gorgeous George Galloway, an MP described himself as a bit of a catch.
George's a street fighter as a politician. He's a great orator.
It was an incredible speech, it actually captivated the House. He's capable of doing this extraordinary speech. But
we congratulate the honourable gentleman on his stunning by-election victory and his return to this House of Commons. And I know he always speaks with great power and great force.
You know, I always ask politicians, if somebody's speaking, who would you go in to listen to? And it used to be Tony Benn, used to be William Hague, people would go in, David Blunkett. I think people will go into the Commons to listen to George speak. So
George Galloway made, I think, probably one of the best speeches I've ever heard in the House of Commons.
This war in which he glories, although how I wish he'd put on a tin hat and pick up a gun and go and fight himself. How I wish to see that sight. This war in which he glories has cost the lives, according to those well-known Saddamist fronts, the Lancet and Johns Hopkins University, well in excess of 100,000 people's lives, and hundreds of thousands more have been maimed and wounded. And it was all for a pack of lies. There were no weapons of mass destruction.
Senator, this is the mother of all smokescreens. You are trying to divert attention from the crimes that you supported, from the theft of billions of dollars of Iraq's wealth. Have a look at the real oil for food scandal. Have a look at the 14 months you were in charge of Baghdad, the first 14 months, when $8.8 billion of Iraq's wealth went missing on your watch. Have a look at Halliburton and the other American corporations that stole not only Iraq's money, but the money of the American taxpayer. Have a look at the oil that you didn't even meter, that you were shipping out of the country and selling, the proceeds of which went who knows where. Have a look at the $800 million you gave to American military commanders to hand out around the country without even counting it or weighing it. Have a look at the real scandal breaking in the newspapers today, revealed in the earlier testimony in this committee, that the biggest sanctions busters were not me or Russian politicians or French politicians. The real sanctions busters were your own companies with the connivance of your own government.
Thank you, Mr. Galloway. Can I ask you about a report that's in today's Sunday Telegraph, which showed that Iran has given Hezbollah long-range missiles capable of targeting any part of Israel. Iran, according to this Iranian MP who helped found Hezbollah, has also said that Iran has given the authorization to target Tel Aviv. Can you blame Israel for wanting to destroy those missiles?
But this is preposterous. America has given Israel missiles that can target not just every city in Lebanon, but every city in the Arab and Muslim world, including Iran. Why should America be allowed to give long-range missiles to Israel, including hundreds of nuclear missiles, but Iran
because it's
is not
given
allowed
it to a
give
terrorist
missiles?
organization.
But they're not a terrorist organization. Only in the mind of Rupert Murdoch's Sky and the Times and the Sun and the News of the World.
I'm going to stop you there, Mr. Galloway. Prescribed terrorist organisations. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. We know that perfectly well. In most people's eyes, they are deemed to be. They had a choice, didn't they? Let's understand this. They had a choice, like the IRA, to take on politics.
Listen, Anna.
I'm saying they had a choice to absorb the idea of politics. They've got two Hezbollah cabinet ministers.
Anna, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. You are totally wrong in saying that in most people's eyes, Hezbollah are terrorists. In most people's eyes, Israel is a terrorist state. It's the fact that you cannot comprehend that fact that leads to the bias which runs through all of your reporting and every question that you've asked me in this interview.
There was no link between Iraq and Al-Qaeda. There was no link between Iraq and the atrocities on the 9th of September, on the 9/11 here in the United States. There was no welcome for the foreign armies that invaded Iraq. Hitchens said they would be greeted by flowers, but there are 2,000 young American boys lying in the ground now, testimony to the fact that they were welcomed by something else. And thousands more wounded, maimed, many of them in wheelchairs for the rest of their lives, testament to the folly of Hitchens and Bush and Cheney and the rest of the neocon gang that dragged your country into this disaster.
Because Brown said it, all the money in the world to pay for the war. He said, whatever it takes, I'll write the check. He was at that time trying to show how much like Mr. Blair he was. It may be that in the next few months he'll spend a lot of time trying to show us how different from Mr. Blair he really is. For me, if you'll forgive me putting it bluntly, they're two cheeks of the same arse. Gordon Brown wrote the check, and he was very clear about it. Whatever it takes, I'll write the check. So we have money to go around the world setting fire to other people's countries, but we don't have money to keep our old age pensioners warm in winter. Thanks very much.
He's trotting out the same ghastly tropes. He's still treating the Palestinian people with utter contempt by using their bones to build a pulpit for himself to spew this divisive rubbish that he always does. But I was on television with him years ago, and the first thing he said, Blair and Brown, he says they're two cheeks of the same up. You know, he used a slightly different word, not backside. He used that against me and somebody else. He just uses it over and over.
Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak are two cheeks of the same backside. And they both got well and truly spanked tonight here in Rochdale.
And him, and when you speak to figures, they said, well, we didn't want to have a situation where George Galloway won. And now George Galloway is going to be entering the House of Commons. He's going to be a vocal MP, I think we can safely assume.
George Galloway has won on his anti-Semitic ticket.
I'm fond of a quote from Ho Chi Minh. Calamity has hardened me and turned my mind to steel.
On the other hand, so are other demagogues in history. They have that skill and that ability. All we can say is the one saving grace is if he has one, and the indications are not good for democracy, they're good for Galloway. The indications are that he will only be an MP for a short time, and he will be a pariah in that.
They said all these things about me in the by-election. And in the by-election, it was them that got crushed in the democratic process. So I'm not sure why he would reheat it now.
The Prime Minister is saying
talk
that
as if this is God. We're talking about little Rishi Sunak in the fag end of his prime ministership. Don't talk to me as if he's come down from the mount with tablets of stone. The things that he says are somehow meant to awe me. They may awe you, they don't awe me.
A lot of people have just watched what the Prime Minister said. This is your opportunity to respond to what he said. Well, he says that there are forces here at home trying to tear us apart. He is implying you are a divisive figure. You have run an election campaign that has tried to appeal, particularly, not entirely, to one section of the community.
Who won the election? Me or Rishi Sunak? I've got the Democratic mandate here, not Rishi Sunak. He didn't even come second. He was lucky to come third. So don't put to me statements made by Rishi Sunak as if I'm supposed to be impressed by them. You don't impress me much.
We at Sky have spent some time today on the streets of Rochdale, and there are people who say that they feel intimidated by people like you and the people that have supported you.
I have just
and they have pointed out that you have concentrated your campaign on foreign affairs, and they worry that Rochdale will not be the winner.
That's my answer to you. I was just elected with a thumping majority by the electorate in Rochdale.
Had powerful enemies, but now I have the most powerful enemies of all. I have the United States Republican neocon leadership. After me, I have Tony Blair. After me, if John Howard had ever heard of me, he'd be after me too. The Iraqi puppet regime are after me. The state of Israel has long regarded me as an enemy. I have very powerful enemies with many resources.